Hey everyone, welcome to the Bruce Lee podcast. Thanks for joining me for this solo episode on this very special day. I recently talked with a number of guests during AAPI month about what a warrior is and how they show up as warriors in their own lives. And I loved those conversations and hearing about their experiences, the knowledge they had to pass on, what they've learned and used in their own lives. And I hope that you enjoyed that too. So now, in remembrance of my father, this July 2021, the 48th anniversary of his passing, I am hoping to take you on a little bit deeper journey into my father's philosophy and talk about what a warrior is at the deepest level. I've been pondering his writings, researching, reading, sitting with, and putting together some thoughts that I am excited to share with you. I hope you enjoy the journey. Here we go. So, my father has a quote on what a warrior is that goes like this: a successful warrior is the average man with laser like focus. The average man, but with great specific focus. I love this because it means that the successful warrior can be anybody. You, me, anybody. But it requires great and close attention and effort. And this is true. Anyone can be a warrior, but what is a warrior? Like, what are we going for? There are many layers and levels to it, just as there are many layers and levels to everything in life. So, I want to talk about what we're really getting down to at the most sort of spiritual, deeply practiced level. So we have a t-shirt in our store that says on the front, Warrior Up. And it has nunchucks on the front, as it should. And on the back, it has this long paragraph that talks about what a warrior is. And it says, warriors protect the vulnerable and are servants of civilization and its future. Warriors master themselves to overcome weakness of character and personal desire. They are devoted to a cause greater than themselves and have the discipline to change their behavior for the sake of honorable ends. They embrace a journey of self-discovery, not only for their own enlightenment, but for the benefit of their communities. A society is not healthy without its warriors. I like it. I like it. I like it. And it's a good jumping off place for our conversation. So, if a warrior is someone who masters themselves and has the discipline to change their behavior, which is, as we know, not an easy thing to do, but they have the discipline to change their behavior for honorable ends. If they embrace a journey of self-discovery, as the t-shirt says, then ultimately a warrior becomes one with himself or herself. They unite with their essence and become masterfully natural, spontaneous, and whole. Natural, meaning not in contradiction with their essential selves or their environment. And spontaneous, meaning able to act immediately and instinctually. And whole, meaning in balance, in coordination with all of what they are. So there is the ability with this depth of warrior to be wise and immediate in action. Immediate with action, but wise. This is important. And it speaks to my father's quotes about the height of cultivation runs to simplicity, and simplicity is the last step of art and the beginning of nature. So, naturalness is simple, right? Because it's in line with you, with who you are, with your path. Simple does not require a lot of mental analysis and strategizing. And simple is immediate and spontaneous because it's natural. It's right there. Simple is free. And so let's go there. Let's talk about that. That's what I want to look at. So there is a parable that my father liked to tell that went like this. There was a fine butcher who used the same knife year after year, yet it never lost its delicate, precise edge. After a lifetime of service, it was still as useful and effective as when it was new. When asked how he had preserved his knife's fine edge, he said, "I follow the line of the hard bone. I do not attempt to cut it, not to mash it, not to contend with it in any way. That would only destroy my knife. In daily living, one must follow the course of the barrier. To try to assail it will only destroy the instrument. And no matter what some people will say, barriers are not the experience of any one person or any group of persons. Barriers are the universal experience." So the domain of the warrior is the domain of the barrier. Barriers are the experience of every human being. Barriers to what we want, to feeling good, to making change, uh, to our mental health, all of it. The desire and the goal to dissolve the barrier or cross the barrier or work with the barrier is the domain of the warrior. If barrier is a challenging word, we can also use the word obstacle. And the warrior works not to be destroyed in the contending with the barrier, in the working with the barrier, in the following of the barrier. But the warrior is also willing to give their life to working with the barrier, give their life in terms of willing to learn, give their time, their energy, their practice to working with the barrier and along the barrier and understanding the barrier. And so it is the responsibility of the warrior to remain sharp, to keep their tools at the ready, to remain whole, functional. This is what the parable is speaking to. I start here because we often think of the warrior as the soldier or the hero running into battle with bravado and skill, but not necessarily with wisdom or patience or simplicity. My father said, in order to control myself, I must first accept myself by going with and not against my nature. Everybody has to think for himself. A right way for a big man may not be the right way for a small man. A right way for someone who is slow may not be a right way for someone who is quick. Each person must understand his weaknesses and his strengths. So to go with oneself and not against oneself is to move along the barriers of the self. It is to lean into one's inner conflicts, one's feelings, in order to become more holy themselves, which allows the warrior to know how to function with heightened skill and ability. It takes courage, great courage, in fact, to contend with the inner barriers. These are the most challenging barriers. We tend to think that the most challenging barriers are on the outside, but they are really on the inside. And so there is a term and a practice that my father spoke about that I want to delve into and introduce you to here. And it is one that I've been really into lately for myself in terms of trying to discover my own path and my own naturalness and simplicity and wholeness in my doing. And the term is Wu Wei. It is a Taoist concept and it speaks to the idea of natural action, sometimes represented as no action. We'll talk about that. My father wrote, naturalism in the sense of Wu Wei really means taking no unnatural action. It means spontaneity. That is, to support all things in their natural stage and thus allow them to transform spontaneously. In this manner, Tao undertakes no activity, and yet there is nothing left undone. I love that. It undertakes no activity, and yet there is nothing left undone. It allows for something to transform spontaneously. It is sometimes so challenging to allow things to transform, because that is change, and we are very good at being resistant to change. But the deepest of warriors are following this path. And it takes great strength and wisdom to follow that path, to allow transformation. My father continued, Wu Wei is spontaneous action without pre-arrangement. It ensures the spirit of harmony with nature. It seeks no violence done, with the result of peace and freedom from disturbance. Wu Wei is the nourishment of the spirit, left alone so it can find stability. It is taking no action. So let me refine that just a little bit. Instead of taking action, because I know we think about taking action and how important that is. And so I'm not saying there's no action. Remember, nothing is left undone. But instead of taking action, it is being action. Doing what is called to be done in the moment of its doing, without overthinking, without preconceiving, without strategizing. It is just being the action that is called for in the moment. My father said, the warrior waits in the calm strength of patience. He that is strong should guard their patience with tenderness. Tenderness. Guard your patience with tenderness. So we know that my dad, and I repeat this all the time, said that patience is not passive. In fact, it is concentrated strength. And you should guard that strength of patience with tenderness, with wisdom, with compassion, with gentle understanding with intuition and faith. My father went on to say the work of conservation is shown to be a continuous actualization and differentiation of form. One does not allow oneself to be influenced by outward success or failure, but confident in one's strength, one bides one's time. What does all that mean? So, the work of conservation. So, think about the butcher conserving the sharpness of the knife's edge by working along the bone rather than assailing the bone. Think about conserving your energy so that you have the energy you need when you need it. And that work of conserving is found in continuous actualization, continuing to show up with what is and bringing yourself to bear with what is happening in this moment. And that work of conservation is also about differentiation of form, allowing yourself to respond as needed, to change, to pivot, to move, to be like water. You put it into a cup, it becomes the cup. To be empty and formless. According to Zen, the spirit is by nature formless, and no objects are to be harbored in it. When anything is harbored there, psychic energy loses its balance, its native activity becomes cramped, and it no longer flows with the stream. Where the energy is tipped, there is too much of it in one direction and a shortage of it in another direction. Where there is too much energy, it overflows and cannot be controlled. In either case, it is unable to cope with ever changing situations. But when there prevails a state of purposelessness, which is a state of fluidity or mindlessness, where there is no strategy you are enforcing, no outcome that you must have, the spirit then harbors nothing in it, nor is it tipped in one direction. But it transcends both subject and object, and it responds empty mindedly to whatever is happening. The spirit by nature is formless, and nothing is to be harbored there, no barriers. This is why the warrior must look within to discover and master themselves and discover their own barriers so that they may flow around them, work with them, and respond simply, naturally, wholly, spontaneously. My father suggests not to localize or partialize is the end of spiritual training. When it is nowhere, it is everywhere. When it occupies but 1/10, it is absent in the other 9/10. An organism works as a whole. A being works best as a whole. We are not a summation of parts, but a very subtle coordination of all these different bits that go into the making of the organism, of the being. Completeness, the now, is an absence of the conscious mind to strive to divide that which is indivisible. For once the completeness of things is taken apart, it is no longer complete. All the pieces of a car that have been taken apart may be there, but it is no longer a car in its nature, which is its life function. And so it is the work of the warrior to identify the pieces, but not so that we can strip them away, get rid of them, but rather so we can integrate them, bring them in, move toward our natural full function, our most full potential. This is the domain of the warrior. Yes, of course, there are things that we want to hack away the unessentials, but the unessentials are the parts of ourselves that are not of ourselves. And the warrior must be prepared, of course, to make mistakes and to lose, but always with the practice that the losses and the mistakes are for our learning, our growing, and for us to be able to better reach for our naturalness, our spontaneity, our wholeness, so that we can serve better, more easily, so that we can be better, more, and easily. So here is the final description of Wu Wei that I will share, and it is by far my favorite one. The principle of Wu Wei is entirely an action of creative intuition, which opens the well springs within man. While the action of assertion, man's common tendency, is preconceptual and rational, it cannot penetrate the hidden recesses of creativity. The action of assertion is viewed from the external of intellection, while the action of non assertion is activated by the inner light. The former action is limited and finite, the latter, free and limitless. I love it. So it's not to say that you must have one without the other. We're not saying get rid of assertive action in favor of only non-assertive action. You will play with them both, but they should serve each other in your unfolding. They should be able to give and take, push and pull as needed. But what's needed, because it's not the heralded part of our society, is to dive deeply into cultivating our natural action so that our assertions that we will attempt in life will be as whole, wise, and natural as possible. So, in closing, there are two more quotes I want to share that I love. They are these simple little sentences, but they are so jam packed with spiritual, mental, emotional, physical nutrition that I will share them with you and break them down a little bit. But here they are. Be at once absorbingly open and rootily relaying your captivating total presence with appropriate inward time. Be at once absorbingly open. Be open, but be absorbingly open, paying attention, aware, connected, and rootily relaying your captivating total presence, rootily grounded, confident, with faith in oneself, centered in that energy, while relaying your total captivating attention, your presence, with appropriate inward time, with intuition, with your guidance systems, with patience, with wisdom. The second quote is, "The integrating principle of the whole, the spirit of the universe, is instinct with contrivance, which flows with purpose. The integrating principle of the whole, the principle of making ourselves more whole, bringing and uniting the pieces of ourselves that will make us more whole, which is the spirit of the universe, is instinct, our natural instinct, with contrivance, with skill that we have gained through practice, and which flows, which moves through us easily, spontaneously, and is adaptable with purpose, with not the assertiveness of this is my purpose, but with presence in response to what is. This is the domain of the warrior. And this society needs its warriors. Thank you for joining me today, July 20th, 2021, in remembrance of my father on the 48th anniversary of his passing. He continues to inspire and guide us toward our personal liberation. Thank you.